The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for nearly a mile in every direction. Massive columns of living crystal rose toward a ceiling that displayed the swirling colors of a distant nebula. Representatives from over 200 species filled the chamber, their bodies ranging from insectoid to reptilian to forms that defied easy description. This was the seat of power for the known galaxy and for 10,000 years. The council had ruled unchallenged. High Arbiter Xyrax of the Valoran hegemony stood at the central podium, his scaled body gleaming under the artificial starlight. The Valorans had dominated the council for centuries, their military might and ruthless efficiency making them the undisputed leaders of galactic civilization. Xyrax had personally overseen the subjugation of 37 species during his career, and he viewed the task before him today as nothing more than routine administration. The human delegation entered through the main doors, and a ripple of curiosity passed through the assembled representatives. Earth had been discovered only 3 standard cycles ago when a Valoran survey ship stumbled upon their primitive radio signals. The humans had barely achieved faster-than-light travel, their technology laughably outdated by galactic standards. They were, in the eyes of the Council, little more than clever animals who had stumbled upon fire. Ambassador Linda Morrison led the human contingent. She was a woman in her early 50s, with gray streaking her dark hair in lines around, her eyes that spoke of difficult decisions and sleepless nights. Behind her walked Admiral Christopher Hayes, a tall man with a soldier's bearing, and Defense Secretary Samuel Grant, whose calm demeanor masked a mind that never stopped calculating odds. Xyrax allowed himself a small smile as the humans approached. He had read the intelligence reports on their species. They were violent, certainly prone to warring among themselves over trivial matters. But they were also soft in ways that the council races were not. They had concepts like mercy and rehabilitation. They believed in second chances and redemption. Such weakness would make them easy to break. "Welcome to the Galactic Council," Xyrax announced, his voice booming through translation devices that rendered his words into the human language. "You stand before the assembled might of civilized space. Consider this an honor, for few primitive species are granted such an audience." Linda showed no reaction to the insult. She had been briefed extensively on Valoran, psychology, and knew that displays of anger or submission would both be used against her. Instead, she simply waited, her expression politely attentive. Xyrax unfurled a holographic document that hung in the air between them. Earth has been assessed and categorized according to Council protocols. Your species has been deemed suitable for integration into the tribute system. You will provide 10,000 of your citizens to serve the Council races. They will work as laborers, servants, and entertainers for a period of no less than 50 standard years. This is the price of peace. The other Council representatives watched with mild interest. They had seen this scene play out countless times before. New species always resisted at first, always made noises about dignity and freedom, but they always submitted in the end. The Council's military power was simply too overwhelming to oppose. "And if we refuse?" Linda asked, her voice steady. Xyrax's smile widened, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. "Then your homeworld will be subjugated by force. Your population will be harvested for tribute regardless, and Earth will be reduced to a mining colony. The only question is whether your people will suffer or prosper. Choose submission, and your world will be protected. Choose resistance, and your species will learn the true meaning of despair." Admiral Hayes shifted slightly behind Linda, his jaw tight with suppressed anger. The intelligence reports had warned them about the tribute system, but hearing it stated so baldly was something else entirely. The Council races viewed humanity as livestock to be harvested, nothing more. Linda turned to consult briefly with her colleagues. The conversation was short, conducted in whispers too quiet for the translation devices to capture. When she faced Xyrax again, her expression had not changed. "The United Earth government will need time to discuss this matter with our people," she said. "We will provide our response within the time frame you have specified." Xyrax waved a dismissive claw. "There is nothing to discuss. You will comply because you have no choice. Every species before you has learned this lesson. The Keleth resisted for 3 cycles before they broke. The Drothans lasted less than one. You are no different, human. You are simply too primitive to understand your position yet, the Keleth ambassador, a willowy being whose skin glowed with soft bioluminescence, shifted uncomfortably at the mention of her people's subjugation, but she said nothing. 3,000 years of servitude had taught the Keleth the cost of speaking out. We understand our position perfectly, Linda replied. We will be in touch. The humans departed without ceremony, leaving the council chamber buzzing with speculation. Most of the representatives dismissed the encounter as unremarkable. The humans would submit, as all species submitted. It was simply the way of things. But the Keleth ambassador watched the human delegation. There was something strange stirring in her chest. There had been something in the human leader's eyes, something that reminded her of stories her grandmother had told her. Stories from before the conquest, when the Keleth had been free, aboard the diplomatic vessel Horizon's Edge. Linda gathered her team in the secure conference room. Holographic displays surrounded them, showing tactical assessments, fleet compositions, and population statistics. The numbers were grim. The Council's enforcement fleet numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Earth's entire military could be destroyed in a matter of hours. They want slaves, Christopher said, his voice tight with controlled fury. They want us to hand over our people to serve aliens who see us as animals. Samuel pulled up additional files on his datapad. The tribute system has been in place for over 8,000 years. Every species the Council has encountered has eventually submitted. Those who resisted were crushed utterly. There are no recorded exceptions. Then we will be the first, Linda said quietly. Both men looked at her with surprise. Linda walked to the main display and brought up an image of the Council's tribute demands. The document was detailed and precise, laying out exactly what was expected of new tributary species. The Valorans are arrogant, she continued. They have held power for so long that they have forgotten what it means to face a genuine threat. They demanded 10,000 citizens from Earth, citizens to serve as laborers and servants. We cannot fight them, Christopher pointed out. The numbers simply do not work.
Ow.
We cannot. But we do not need to fight them. Linda's smile was cold in a way that made even the hardened admiral uncomfortable. The Council made a critical error in their demand. They specified citizens. They did not specify which citizens. She brought up a new file, one marked with the highest security classifications available. Prison population statistics scrolled across the display. Names and faces appeared, each one accompanied by a list of crimes that ranged from disturbing to horrifying. Earth has prisons, Admiral. We have places where we keep the people we fear most. The serial killers and war criminals. The terrorists and masterminds. The monsters that even our violent species cannot tolerate walking free. Understanding dawned in Samuel's eyes. You want to send them the prisoners. I want to give the Council exactly what they asked for. 10,000 human citizens. They simply will not be the citizens the Council expects. Christopher stared at the files scrolling past. Men and women who had committed atrocities that made headlines shudder, minds twisted toward destruction and manipulation. The very worst that humanity had to offer. The Council has no idea what they are asking for, he said slowly. They think humans are soft. They think we are weak. Then let us educate them, Linda replied. Let us show them what humanity produces in its darkest moments. And let them discover, too late, that they should never have demanded tribute from Earth. Fort Morrison Maximum Security Complex sat deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Buried under 3 miles of solid granite, it was a place that did not officially exist. A facility designed to hold individuals so dangerous that conventional prisons could not contain them. The men and women incarcerated here had committed crimes, so severe that society had simply decided to forget they existed. Warden. Patricia Coleman walked the sterile corridors with the confidence of someone who had spent 20 years managing the unmanageable. She was a small woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen everything humanity could do to itself. Nothing surprised her anymore, or so she had thought. Until the orders arrived from the highest levels of government, the main assembly hall had been cleared for the occasion. Reinforced barriers separated the inmates from the small platform where Patricia now stood. Armed guards lined every wall, their weapons trained on the assembled prisoners. These precautions were necessary. The people gathered here had killed guards before, had escaped from facilities that were supposedly impossible to escape from, had demonstrated repeatedly that they could not be trusted for even a moment. Vincent Caruso sat in the front row, his handsome face wearing an expression of polite interest. He was 43 years old and had been responsible for the deaths of 47 people during his campaign of corporate sabotage, but the deaths had been incidental to his true purpose. Vincent was a destroyer of systems, a man who found weaknesses in structures that others believed impenetrable. 3 major corporations had collapsed because of his work, their secrets exposed, their leaders ruined. The authorities had caught him only through luck, and everyone knew it. Beside Vincent sat Margaret Holloway, her military bearing evident despite the orange prison uniform. She had been a colonel once, commanding special operations forces in conflicts that the public never knew about. Her tactical genius was legendary within certain circles. So was her willingness to cross lines that other soldiers would not approach. The unauthorized bombing campaign that ended her career had killed over 200 civilians. Margaret had shown no remorse at her trial. She had simply explained in calm and measured tones the deaths were necessary to achieve her objectives. Patricia activated the display screen behind her. "Good morning. You have all been selected for a special program. What I am about to tell you is classified at the highest levels, but frankly, it no longer matters. None of you are ever leaving this facility through conventional means." A low murmur passed through the crowd. Patricia waited for it to subside before continuing. 3 years ago, humanity made contact with alien life. The Galactic Council, as they call themselves, has ruled the known galaxy for 10,000 years. They have demanded tribute from Earth, 10,000 humans to serve as laborers and servants to alien masters. The reaction was mixed. Some inmates laughed. Others simply stared with expressions of disbelief. A few, the ones whose minds worked faster than most, began to understand. "The Council believes humans are primitive and docile," Patricia continued. "They expect us to send our best citizens. Farmers and scientists, builders and healers. People who will submit quietly and serve without resistance." She paused, letting the words sink in. "The United Earth government has decided to comply with the tribute demand. However, we will not be sending our best citizens. We will be sending you." Vincent Caruso began to laugh. It started as a chuckle and built into something genuine and delighted, a sound of pure appreciation for the elegance of the scheme. Others joined him, the assembly hall filling with dark amusement as the prisoners understood what was being offered. "Your sentences will be commuted," Patricia said. "Your records will be sealed. As far as Earth is concerned, you will simply cease to exist. You will be transported to Council space and handed over as tribute, exactly as demanded." The woman in the back stood up. Diana Vance was perhaps the most dangerous person in the room, though her crimes did not involve direct violence. She had built the largest human trafficking network in history, moving people across borders with an efficiency that authorities had never been able to match. Her understanding of logistics and human psychology was unparalleled, as she had evaded capture for nearly 15 years before a single mistake brought her down. "What do you expect us to do once we arrive?" Diana asked, her voice carrying clearly across the hall. Patricia's smile was thin and cold. "Nothing. We expect nothing. You are tribute, being given in compliance with galactic law. What happens after that is entirely your own affair. The Council has no idea what they are receiving. They have never encountered anything like you." A massive man in the third row shifted forward. His name was Marcus Webb, and he had been a special forces operator before his discharge for excessive brutality. He had then worked as a mercenary, selling his particular skills to the highest bidder. The things he had done in war zones across the world had eventually caught up with him. "You are turning us loose on an unsuspecting galaxy," Marcus said. "It was not a question. We are complying with the Council's demands. Nothing more, nothing less." Patricia's expression gave nothing away. The Council races believe themselves to be civilized. They have held power for so long that they have forgotten what it means to face genuine opposition. They have never encountered a species like humanity, and they certainly have never encountered humans like you. Over the following weeks, the selection process continued throughout Earth's hidden prison system. Men and women who had been locked away and forgotten found themselves being prepared for transport to the stars. Hackers who had brought nations to their knees. Assassins whose kills numbered in the dozens. Con artists who had deceived entire governments. Cult leaders who could bend thousands to their will. Soldiers who had committed atrocities that defied description. Gregory Marsh was among those selected. He had founded a religious movement that accumulated over 50,000 followers before the authorities intervened. The things that happened within his compounds had shocked investigators who thought themselves immune to shock. Gregory's ability to manipulate and control others bordered on the supernatural, talent he had refined over decades of practice. Each prisoner was given a choice. They could remain in their cells, forgotten by a world that wanted them erased from memory. Or they could accept transport to council space, where their skills might find new applications. Every single one of them chose to go. Dr. Nathan Price, a psychologist assigned to evaluate the selected prisoners, stood with Linda Morrison as the final transport vessels were loaded. 10,000 of humanity's most dangerous individuals filed aboard in orderly lines, their faces showing various mixtures of anticipation and dark amusement. "You understand what you are doing," Nathan said quietly. "These people are not soldiers. They are not freedom fighters. They are predators, pure and simple. You are releasing them on an unsuspecting civilization." Linda watched as Vincent Caruso boarded the lead transport. The master saboteur caught her eye and offered a small nod of acknowledgement. One professional to another. "The council wanted tribute," Linda replied. "They wanted to harvest our people like cattle. They assumed we would send lambs to the slaughter, peaceful citizens who would submit and serve without question." She turned to face Nathan, and there was something ancient in her eyes. Something that spoke of a species that had clawed its way to dominance through blood and fire and ruthlessness that other races could not imagine. "Instead, we are sending them wolves. And the council has no idea what wolves can do when they are set loose among sheep." The transport vessels lifted off, carrying their cargo toward the stars. Earth watched them go, and waited. Station Korath 9 hung in orbit around a dying star, its massive structure stretching for miles in every direction. The station served as the primary processing center for tribute species in this sector of council space, handling the intake and distribution of over 1 million new servants every year. For 3,000 years it had operated with mechanical efficiency, breaking down new arrivals and transforming them into compliant workers for the council races. Guard. Captain Thylos watched the human transport vessels dock from his post in the security center. The Valoran officer had been stationed here for 15 years, and the arrival of new tribute species had long since ceased to interest him. They always arrived frightened and confused. They always required a period of adjustment, during which the guards would demonstrate the consequences of disobedience, and they always broke. Eventually, every species broke. To begin standard processing, Thylos ordered his subordinates: sort by physical capability and assign to labor pools. Flag any individual showing signs of resistance for enhanced conditioning. The human tribute filed off the transport vessels in orderly lines, their heads appropriately lowered, their movements slow and defeated. Thylos nodded with satisfaction. The humans had clearly been warned about what awaited them. They understood their place already. Vincent Caruso shuffled along with the others, appearing to be nothing more than another broken spirit. But his eyes were constantly moving, cataloging everything he observed: guard rotations, security camera positions, electronic access points, the layout of corridors and maintenance tunnels. His mind, which had brought 3 corporations to ruin, was already building a map of the station's vulnerabilities. Behind him, Margaret Holloway moved with the careful precision of someone who had spent decades studying military installations. The guard formations were sloppy, she noted. The Valorans relied entirely on their technological superiority and the assumption that tribute species would never fight back. They had no concept of operational security because they had never needed it. The humans were processed through intake. facilities designed to strip them of identity and dignity. They were given numbers instead of names, assigned to barracks based on physical attributes, and put to work on menial tasks throughout the station. The council races barely acknowledged their presence. Tribute species were beneath notice, tools to be used and discarded as needed, but the humans were not behaving as expected. Diana Vance spent her first week building a complete picture of the station's social. She identified which Valoran officers were susceptible to manipulation, which could be bribed, and which could be eliminated without raising suspicion. Her network began to form. Invisible connections between human workers, who passed information through codes and signals that the guards could not detect. Gregory Marsh was assigned to work alongside tribute species from a dozen different worlds. The Kelith, the Drothans, the Villani, and countless others who had served the council for generations. He spoke to them softly during rest periods, planting seeds of doubt and hope. His words spread like fire through dry grass. Passed from worker to worker in whispers that the guards could not silence, Marcus Webb organized the human prisoners into cells, each group knowing only its immediate members and objectives. The military structure took shape without any visible signs. A ghost army forming within the station's population of broken servants. 2 weeks after their arrival, Vincent called a meeting in the maintenance tunnels beneath the station's primary reactor. The space was cramped and poorly lit, accessible only through service passages that the guards rarely bothered to monitor. Margaret, Diana, Gregory, and Marcus gathered around him, their faces illuminated by the dim glow of emergency lighting. "Phase 1 is complete," Vincent said quietly. "I have mapped their computer systems. Diana has established information networks throughout the station. Gregory has begun preparing the other tribute species. Marcus has organized our people into operational cells. The guards suspect nothing," Margaret reported. "They are complacent beyond anything I have ever seen. Their entire security doctrine is based on the assumption that we will not fight back." Diana nodded agreement. "The station's command structure is bloated and inefficient. Administrator Korath runs the facility more as a business than a military installation. She is concerned primarily with processing quotas and profit margins." "What about the other tribute species?" Vincent asked, turning to Gregory. The cult leader's smile was serene and unsettling. 3,000 years of servitude have broken their spirits, but not their memories. The older ones still tell stories of freedom. The younger ones listen to those stories with hunger in their eyes. When we move, they will be ready to follow. Marcus spread a rough map of the station on the floor between them. "I have identified the key locations. The armory here, the communications center here, the docking bays here. With coordinated strikes, we can take control of all three within the first hour." "The council fleet will respond," Margaret warned. "Once they realize what is happening, they will send everything they have." "By the time they respond, it will be too late," Vincent replied. "We are not trying to hold this station. We are trying to send a message." The planning continued for several more weeks. Each day, the humans performed their assigned duties without complaint, appearing to be model tribute workers. Each night, they prepared for war. Guard Captain Thylos began to notice small things. Valoran officers who had been reliable started making mistakes. Equipment malfunctioned in ways that seemed almost deliberate. The tribute species moved through the station with a new energy, their eyes holding something that made him uncomfortable. He reported his concerns to Administrator Korath, but she dismissed them with a wave of her clawed hand. "You are imagining things, Captain. The humans are adjusting well. Their productivity numbers are excellent." "Something feels wrong," Thylos insisted. "They are too quiet, too compliant." "They are tribute, Captain. They are supposed to be compliant. That is the entire point of the system." Thylos wanted to argue further, but he could not articulate what bothered him. How could he explain that the silence felt different from the broken silence of other species? How could he describe the way the humans watched everything with eyes that missed nothing? In the maintenance tunnels, Vincent received word from his network that the final preparations were complete. 10,000 humans were positioned throughout the station, ready to move on his signal. The other tribute species had been primed by Gregory's careful words. Waiting for the spark that would ignite their long-suppressed rage, Vincent looked at his fellow conspirators. These monsters that Earth had produced and then tried to forget. They had been locked away because civilization could not tolerate their existence. Now they would show the galaxy exactly why humanity had learned to fear itself. The Council wanted tribute, he said softly. They wanted to harvest humans like cattle, assuming we would submit as every other species had submitted. He smiled. And there was nothing human left in his expression. Tonight, we teach them why that was a mistake. The uprising began at the midnight hour. Station time, when the guard shifts were changing and attention was at its lowest. Vincent Caruso sat at a terminal in the maintenance sublevel, his fingers dancing across alien controls that he had spent weeks learning to understand. The Valoran security systems were sophisticated, but they had been designed to keep threats out, not to contain threats that were already inside. All cells. This is command, he spoke into the hijacked communication network. Execute Phase 1. Throughout Station Korath-9, 10,000 humans moved as one. Marcus Webb led the assault on the armory, his team flowing through the corridors with the precision of a military operation. The guards stationed there were caught completely off guard. They had spent years watching docile tribute workers shuffle past. They had no framework for understanding the violence that came for them now. The fighting was brief and brutal. Marcus had trained his people well, using nothing but improvised weapons until they could secure proper arms. The Valoran guards died, still wearing expressions of confusion. Unable to comprehend that the cattle had suddenly grown teeth, Margaret Holloway directed operations from a commandeered security center, her tactical mind orchestrating movements across the entire station. She watched through hijacked cameras as her people swept through corridor after corridor, their attacks coordinated to prevent any organized response. Southern sector is secure, came a report over the network. Moving to secondary targets. Eastern barracks have been liberated. Tribute species are joining our forces. Communications center is under our control. External signals have been blocked. Grigori Marsh walked through the liberated sections like a prophet among his followers. The other tribute species, those who had been broken for generations, looked at him with something like worship in their eyes. He spoke to them softly, his words spreading like wildfire through populations that had forgotten what freedom meant. The Council told you that resistance was impossible, he said to a gathering of Keleth workers, their luminescent skin flickering with suppressed emotion. They told you that submission was the only path. But look around you. Look at what is happening. The humans have shown you the truth. Resistance is not impossible. It merely requires the will to act. The Keleth began to move, joining the human fighters with tools and improvised weapons. The Drothans followed, then the Vallani, then species whose names had been forgotten during centuries of servitude. The uprising spread like a plague through the station, overwhelming the guards through sheer numbers. Administrator Korath received the first reports in her private quarters, where she had been reviewing productivity statistics. She stared at the emergency alert scrolling across her screen with an expression of pure disbelief. "This is impossible," she whispered. "They are tribute. They cannot be doing this." Her door exploded inward, and Diana Vance stepped through the smoke with a captured weapon in her hands. The woman who had moved millions of people across borders without detection had turned those same skills to moving fighters through a space station. Administrator Diana said pleasantly, "I think we need to have a conversation about the future of this facility." Guard Captain Thylos had managed to gather a force of loyal Valorans in the station's central hub. They formed a defensive perimeter around the command center, determined to hold until reinforcements could arrive. "Send a distress signal," he ordered. "Contact the fleet. Tell them we are under attack. Communications are blocked, sir. We cannot reach anyone outside the station." Thylos felt something he had not experienced in 15 years of service. Genuine fear. The tribute species were not supposed to be capable of this. They were supposed to be broken, compliant, grateful for the opportunity to serve their betters. What he saw through the security feeds defied everything he understood about the natural order of the galaxy. Humans fought with a savagery that shocked him. They used tactics he had never encountered, striking from unexpected angles, withdrawing before counterattacks could form, always keeping the defenders off balance. And they fought without mercy, killing guards who tried to surrender just as readily as those who resisted. Margaret arrived at the central hub with the main assault force. She studied the Valoran defensive positions through a captured scanner, her mind automatically calculating angles of attack and probable casualties. "They are dug in well," Marcus observed beside her. "Taking that position will be costly." "Then we will not take it through direct assault," Margaret replied. She keyed her communication device. "Vincent, I need the environmental controls for the central hub." "Already on it," came the response. Venting atmosphere in 30 seconds, the Valorans watched in horror as the air began to leave their defensive position. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, trapping them in a rapidly depressurizing space. Thylos tried to order a breakout, but his troops were already panicking, their discipline collapsing as they realized what was happening. The humans waited patiently outside, wearing breathing masks they had prepared for exactly this situation. When the Valoran resistance finally broke, when the desperate defenders tried to flee through the bulkheads, Marcus and his team were waiting. Administrator Karath was brought before Vincent in the command center, her claws bound with magnetic restraints. She stared at the human who had masterminded the uprising, trying to understand what she was seeing. "You were tribute," she said, her voice shaking. "You were supposed to be servants. How is this possible?" Vincent leaned forward, and his smile was the same one that had watched corporations burn. "You made a fundamental error, Administrator. Your council demanded tribute from Earth. You expected us to send farmers and teachers and builders, peaceful people who would submit quietly and serve without complaint." He gestured at the humans surrounding him. Men and women whose records would have given nightmares to the administrators who had once kept them caged. Instead, Earth sent us, the ones that humanity itself fears too much to keep walking free. The killers and destroyers, the manipulators and madmen, the very worst that our species produces. Korath's scales had gone pale with terror. "What do you want?" "Want?" Vincent laughed. "We want nothing from you, Administrator. You are simply the first lesson in a very long education. The galaxy needs to understand what it means to threaten humanity, what it means to treat us like cattle to be harvested." Stood, looking out at the captured station through the command center's windows. "When the council fleet arrives, they will find this station under new management. They will find their guards dead and their tribute species liberated. And they will begin to understand that humanity is not like the others. We do not submit. We do not break. We simply wait for the opportunity to strike back." The station fell completely within 6 hours. The human losses were minimal, their opponents simply too unprepared for what they faced. As dawn broke over the dying star, Margaret stood on the bridge of a captured Valoran warship, watching her people prepare the fleet for departure. "Where do we go now?" Marcus asked. Margaret's smile held no warmth at all. "Everywhere. We scatter across council space and demonstrate exactly what Earth has unleashed. The uprising has begun, but the war is just starting." The Galactic Council chamber had never seen such chaos. Representatives from dozens of species shouted over each other, their voices blending into a roar of fear and outrage. Emergency reports scrolled across every display screen, each one bringing news of fresh disasters spreading across council space. High Arbiter Xerix stood at the central podium, his scales flushed dark with fury. 6 months had passed since the uprising at Station Korath 9, and in that time, the humans had proved themselves to be a nightmare beyond anything the council had imagined. Silence. Xerax roared, his voice cutting through the chaos. The chamber fell quiet, though the tension remained thick enough to taste. "We will address these matters in an orderly fashion." The Keleth ambassador rose from her seat, her luminescent skin flickering with barely contained emotion. "High Arbiter, the tribute system is collapsing. Species that have served loyally for generations are rising up across the galaxy. They speak of the humans, of what happened at Korath 9. They believe that resistance is possible now. The humans are criminals," Xerax snarled. "Earth sent us their worst elements, their most dangerous individuals. This is an act of war, and what would you have us do about it?" The Drothan representative's voice was bitter. Our enforcement fleet has been hunting the human vessels for months. We have lost over 200 ships. Every time we corner one of their squadrons, they slip away and strike somewhere else." The reports told the story in horrifying detail. Vincent Caruso had established himself in the financial centers of Council space. His expertise in system destruction now applied to galactic markets. Entire economies had crashed without warning. Their collapse traced back to a single human working from the shadows. Margaret Holloway commanded what had become known as the Liberation Fleet, a growing armada of captured Council vessels crewed by freed tribute species. Her unconventional tactics had shattered a dozen enforcement squadrons, her strategic genius proving superior to commanders who had never faced genuine opposition. Diana Vance ran the underground network that moved escaped tribute,